Welcome back to the channel. 1v1 action, Mongol on French Pass, and it is going to be Viper up against Fortesc 3025. That's right. The final form of the Fortesc, it took many iterations, over 3,000 in fact, but this is the godly one, because right now Fortesc, at the time recording, is sitting in third place on the leaderboards with 1,973 elo rating, almost cracking that 2k barrier. The only person closer to following up on what Gojira has achieved is official Kick W at 1990. Viper, on the other hand, is also getting very close. He himself sitting in 7th place at the moment with 1,928 elo rating, so he's clawing up. Viper says, I gotta mark my position, right? I gotta put my stamp of approval in this game, show you guys who the real boss is. We'll have to see if he can do it in this one to help him on his way. Fortesc, by the way, I can never get a confirmed answer on this, so it seems like it's one of possibly 4 players. So Fortesc is either Lucifron, Vortex, the Mister, or Recon. And I would say I don't think it's Recon based on the fact that his accounts have been playing very recently. And then when I think about Lucifron seems like the most feasible, or Vortex, because Lucifron hasn't played on his main account for 13, basically, and Vortex for 8. So those would be my 2 kind of front runners. I do believe that the Mister has been grinding again on the main. Yeah, he was playing just yesterday. So I would rule out the likelihood that Fortesc belongs to Mister, but I do think it belongs to one of the 2 Spanish brothers, either Lucifron or Vortex, would be my top tier answers. Yeah, especially considering Recon was playing on the Whatevs account just 21 hours ago. So that's kind of my give and take. If anyone's actually seen one of these players live on this account, be sure to let me know in the comments below. But we're going to go with this being Lucifron or Vortex. I'm just not sure which of the 2. Either way, it's still a top 10 player. Like we said, the Fortesc account is in 3rd. And remember that Lucifron, that account is in 4th place. Vortex's main account is in 8th place. So overall, regardless of how we measure this, this is a top 10 player game, right? Basically the best of the best. Let's see how it's going to play out. So Mongol on this map, there are some devious temptations. The Satan's work in your ear, shall we say, in that we have seen a lot of Mongol players try for the very greedy choice of going into the Silver Tree. I'm kind of intrigued to see if we get it in this game or if it's going to be outright action with the Deer Stone. The reason you go Deer Stone, by the way, is if you feel like you're going to be aggressed early or you need to aggress early, because the whole purpose behind it, of course, is that mobility factor, which you can get access to later with the outpost crawling, the yam speed from the outposts in the Castle Age and beyond. But a lot of the time, we just see people prioritize the yam because you're looking for a way of gap closing and closing out the game within the first 5-10 minutes if there's an exploitable opportunity. And I do think a lot of players in the Mongol matchup tend to go for the Deer Stone as a safety precaution against their opponent doing a Deer Stone, right? Because you don't want to be in a situation where, if you're talking mirror matchup, right, where you guys basically do the same thing, the same units, the same way, the last thing you want is your opponent to have a 15% movement speed advantage. Movement speed is such a big deal, and it gives you such an edge, and that gives you an edge as well. Viper, sniping out the Khan with a TC. Fortesc, he wrapped around this. He didn't know. He wasn't sure where the TC was parked, and it loses him the Khan for 2 minutes at the start of the game. And the start of the game is important, folks. That vision advantage, that kind of play around the early phase can matter a lot. The good news, at least for Fortesc, is he's going to have out scouts to begin with because he did drop the stable, but we see Viper does the exact same. This is one of the popular openings, the other one being Spearman, but both of them wanting to give themselves an opportunity to play into the pro scouts later. Another thing, by the way, you can do outside of pro scouting is you can also choose to actually just raid early on. Remember that Mongols get additional value in that if they set a building on fire, they get 50 food and 50 gold. And scouts are quick enough moving across the map. And it might be that Viper feels confident to do that because, remember, he's got a Khan that's alive. Meanwhile, Fortesc, he's still waiting 60 seconds. That could be long enough to basically take out half the health of this Uvu. And that's a huge deal, by the way. If you slow down your opponent's Uvu by burning it to the ground, right, that slows down the stone generation. Yes, they can rebuild it, but the fact is that you put a dent in the ability to scale with an early military presence, right? And also, look at this. Silver Tree on one side. What is going to be the choice of Viper? Viper is still not ready for a tech up. He invested in a lot more scouts, yeah. So 3 to the 7 is the count. So you have to find value for your Viper, and that's why he chases across. He snipes out one of these scouts, so takes Fortesc from 4 to 3. And now with 6 scouts and a Khan, and only a stable here, look what he forces his opponent into doing. Early Horseman. And it is going to be Silver Tree on both sides. So no Yam that's going to be in effect in this game. This is interesting. I have noticed a lot more players switching to Silver Tree just because of what we talked about, right? With outpost crawling being so popular, the Deer Stone doesn't really have as much value as it once did. It's usually just a precaution against early aggression, but neither of them feeling aggressed, right? It makes more sense to me that Viper went for this over Fortesc. Although Fortesc did start building this before he saw this aggression, right? Before he lost the scout trade. So from him, he was from his perspective, he was safe, right? And then now he's definitely feeling safe with four horsemen out. And meanwhile, Viper's already halfway complete on this, right? So he can't stop at this stage. Otherwise, you're definitely going to be too late to the Feudal. So he's just stuck with a Silver Tree, whether he likes it or lumps it. And even more scouts being built. Finally, it'll be a few horsemen coming out for Viper. And he is still about 20 seconds out from completing the Silver Tree. Khan being chased down. No maneuver arrow. Nice attempt to body block, but Fortesc is the wrong game, my friend. We're not in Warcraft. It doesn't work as well as you'd like. And as a result, it looks like the Khan should be able to back off and away from this for the most. Let's take a few pokes in his Tushki on the way out. Nice use of the scouts there by Viper. He basically wants to get in front to block this. By the way, what I was talking about body blocking, it's exactly what it sounds like. So certain RTSs, certain MOBAs, they have a means by which you can body block. You can essentially stop a person almost entirely from moving if you can get right in front of them. This is most infamous in more recent years in Dota 2. But I believe it did exist in Warcraft to a high degree as well, where essentially if you're very smart with the use of the S key and moving a unit around, you can essentially lock an opponent behind your unit, right? Because the whole concept is to do with the way that pathfinding is done. And what that means is like when you click to make a move, the way pathfinding works is it'll check where units are. It'll make a quick run through of the grid, as it's known. So there's like nodes all across the ground to give you pathfinding options, and it'll take the shortest available route, factoring in buildings, obstructions such as units. If those units move in front of you, as soon as you do that calculation, it has to redo the calculation. So there's kind of a halt, a slowdown as you try to get around, and then before, failing to get around, then you'll actually start calculating the new route. As I'm nerding out, by the way, I know there is a fight going on, but it's just an early skirmish. It looks like it's going to be an advantage again for Viper, but he's on the home field, so you expect this. But yeah, the cool thing about this, by the way, is why that body blocking works in certain games, where essentially you allow the person to begin calculating the route, they get given a route, and then you get in front of them, and then it takes a moment for the unit to realize the route is now blocked to find a new one. Why that works in other games, but doesn't really work that well in this, is because of the way that pathfinding is handled in this in conjunction with something called flocking. So flocking is a very popular coding technique around pathfinding. The whole concept is that when units are in unison, they'll try and basically group together to move around. But the other interesting knock-on effect that has outside of formations is usually what happens with flocking behaviors is that there's this kind of push-off from another unit, right? So you're not actually allowed to get inside the hitbox of another unit at all, right? But you notice, even by like the fact it's got a circle around it, it's actually true to what's happening here. Most games, like older games especially, would treat this a bit more blockish, which is how you're able to get the body blocks in. But with the way that this is handled, there's always a force designed to push you away from the center of another unit. So when you get in range, what's essentially happening is you're being knocked out in a direction away from the center mass of that unit, which means instead of getting like direct body blocking, what's happening is they're being pushed off, and then they're very quickly realizing because they're out of position, they need to recalculate where they want to go. I also do believe that Age of Empires 4 utilizes mesh pathfinding grids. Mesh pathfinding grids are very different. So the way mesh pathfinding grids work is this whole floor is made out of polygons, right? They're shapes. Usually the way it works, they'll break it down into its triangle form. And the way it works is that let's say you start where this sacred site is, and you were trying to get beyond these trees. What would happen is if there's polygon here, polygon here, polygon here, there's vertices, as they're called, the corners, the polygons, all around here. What you do is you check each of these polygons, and then you keep scanning a direct line to each to see how close you can get to your final point before being blocked by something. And then that's your near point that you want to go to. And then the small things you can do around optimizing that to corners. And I've realized that we've been going on about this too long. This is an entirely different video that probably make more sense with a Paint 3D open or something. Because, we're high-tech guys. The old boomers use Paint, but we're in the 21st century, Paint 3D. Maybe that's something I'll talk about in length before. If anyone's wondering how I'm able to talk about this, are you even qualified, Pigeon? I studied game design for 3 years, specialized in programming, was a software engineer for 2 years. So I know some things. Wink. Viper now raiding. Going to force the pressure out. So there's going to be a move. You got the Juju going. The outposts have started to be dropped, so you are getting that Yam movement speed. As you see, beautiful thing that comes into place in the Feudal Age. Usually a lot of people kind of really like end up scaling into this in Castle Age more just because outside of using Silver Tree, you don't really necessarily need this outpost network this early, especially because you usually have the Deerstone, which is why we usually see that nice glow effect from the outpost when people hit the castle. But when you go for Silver Tree, it makes sense to get the outpost network down and get the Yam movement speed as soon as possible. Remember, in the early phase of the game, it's going to affect cavalry and trades, as you can see there anyway, so you don't even have to worry about needing the tech that's going to allow you to juice your units, because obviously without that variable, usually there's a tech that you need to research that allows you to get your hands on the effect for infantry and everything else. As you can see there you go, Yam network. And you can see it's decently pricey, so the fact that you're going for a cavalry only allows you to dodge out that price for a while. Allows you to also focus more gold and, of course, the wood into the cavalry, into the caravan network, the traders. So overall, just nice savings. And that's another reason why, especially if you're going Silver Tree, playing into a cavalry composition makes more sense. If they had gone for spears or archers at all, we would have seen the Deerstone probably. Or we would have seen a rush into Castle Age to be able to get your hands on the Yam network for all unit types. So far, Viper, I gotta highlight this. This is a big deal. He went for Magadai. Fortesc is not, because Fortesc is teching up. Look, he's halfway. And he's going for the Kurultai. Okay, this is the acceptable situation to do Kurultai in. If you have got yourself a Deerstone and you're going for trade, there's not really that much value in the step readout anymore. It's just, you're going to have your economy for gold infinitely scaling in the back of your base. Why would you then add even more eco units? Because then you end up in a situation where maybe like you're at 100 eco and you're like, oh, I have a step readout. Okay, I want like 140 eco. So you don't really have a military force at that stage. So instead, you can actually access the Kurultai. It's a justifiable investment at this stage. Kurultai, for those that do not know, because we never see it really, it's a 25% damage buff you can see for 30 seconds. If the Khan's nearby, it also heals units in range. So this is something you use very aggressively. The whole idea is you take a fight in your base, and then you roll it across the map, and then you siege straight into your opponent's base with that juiced up damage. Tech up complete. Fire's going to be forced, trying to wrap around to get on the Magadai. Remember, you get that bonus damage. You already stabbed one or two of them out. And it looks like Viper is going to back up for the moment. He's not really fully outnumbered. It's the Yam movement speed that's the problem, though. It means the Magadai, even with their drive-by movement speed, they're going to actually be chased down here and stabbed out. Remember, the Horsemen do move faster than the Magadai by default, but this Yam is just making it so much easier. Over 2 movement speed per second. We'll finally back off a little bit. Has to re-engage the main line. Kind of follow the scouts do become a little bit frustrating. And also, if you get rid of the scouts, there's no real way that the Viper can actually raid you, right? Because the Magadai don't do damage to buildings. They have to target the villages. And this should just be where Viper loses the army. The quality factor, right? Even the Khan adding so much damage in now, 12 per shot, compared to what it was before, which is a 5. And it looks like most of the Magadai now dead. Only a few scouts left. Viper is going to begin the tech up. And I do believe we are getting the step readout. Also a secondary TC. We didn't even notice Viper had done this. This must have been quite recent. Or I'm just blind. I mean, he definitely distracted us as well as Fortesc in Fortesk's own base. That's why this fight is actually really good for him when you think about it. It does become a little bit worrisome that Fortesc still has so many of his now vet horsemen alive near your base. And I am kind of surprised he went into the step readout. I don't know if Viper thought his opponent would do the same. There's not really a reason to, though. This doesn't mean, however, he's going to continue to outscale his opponent, and he kind of needs to, because right now, he hasn't got a long route, right? He's the one now that's going to come under pressure, and you can see it in the way that they've set up their routes. Fortesc has got a cross-map trade route, and Viper has half the map. And we can see it in the numbers, right? 52 gold here, 162 gold here. So much more value being obtained out of Fortesk's route right now. And that's why Viper actually probably needs this step readout. He needs to get surplus gold still. He's not feeling comfortable. The army starts to build. Fortesc understands he has zonal control over the center. He hasn't got to worry about raids into him anytime soon. And it's unlikely his opponent is necessarily going to go hard into cavalry alone. But if he does, it's going to be more of these, right? The Magadai. The Magadai already counted. This is what can be wonky about what Viper's doing. Viper needs to make sure he's got an ample front line to protect this. It might be that the call is to go into, say, the Lancers. Lancers could be amazing, but once again, you have that issue of reaching targets, right? Horsemen always cause this frustration because they're the fastest unit in the game. it's actually impossible for Lancers to stick on top of them. And just more of these pastures going down. I don't... No, there wasn't any attempt to try and utilize the Uber on either side. It would have been quite far away. But yeah, Fortesc is already ahead of his opponent. He's got so many pastures here, so he's stabilized on the food front. And when we look at the numbers, you can see Viper, he's diversified in the gold, right? So he's not actually competing on the food or the wood. If anything, he needs some more people on wood, and he needs to prep to put more people on food when he drops more pastures. But so far, he's only beginning this transition. It's why he can't actually afford to have more than 15 people at max working on food right now. Here come the horsemen, charging in, and he hasn't got an army. He slowed down the build-up. He was trying to stabilize his economy, and this might cost him a lot. Charges in. Not enough room for all the Phillies. The double TC is going to leave him exposed, remember, because these secondary TCs, they have half the space of the primary. And look at the horsemen running rampant right now. Fortesc looking for the big dent. Magadai split off. Causing a lot of havoc right now for Fortesc, but Fortesc understands he could actually just choose to target the caravan. So that's what he does. He splits off a small group to deal with the traders, sends the rest after the Magadai. The Magadai who take bonus damage from these horsemen, now being 24 damage per strike. And after that, Horseman army is almost rinsed, but decent damage done. How many was that he sniped out? I mean, villagers, I want to say 5, 6 maybe. The traders, at least that as well. And you can see the numbers, right? Fortesc at 81 eco right now compared to Viper 64. Keep in mind that Fortesc was stabilized on constant churn out of the caravan traders a little bit quicker than Viper, but still, Viper should have been able to even up this distance between them by now, courtesy of the fact he has a secondary TC. So he's getting in a lot of trouble right now. The Magadai did keep him alive for the moment, courtesy of them being up in the vet status, and I believe he did get his hands on... No, he hasn't gone for the Sire Bow Limbs, which is very surprising. It's quite a cost-effective research if you've got, say, 10, 15 Magadai, and he's at the 10 mark right now, with that 11. This is where he has to get some vengeance, right? The problem is Fortesc is going to mirror him, and this time you won't have the defenses, the outposts, you won't have like the TCs firing in as well. These horsemen will just be able to take you on their home turf, and it's questionable how much value you're going to be able to find out the Magadai. He has to be fast here. And he has to wrap around the right way. And I think these have been upgraded as well. Yeah, they have. So these will defend the trade route quite effectively against the 0 armor Magadai. The pathetic 105 health Magadai. And there it is. One already gets sniped out. Moves in. Looks onto the traders next. And they're going to garrison in straight away. We'll chase even deeper as fast as possible. But Fortesc, quick to minimize casualties here, as most of the Magadai are already dead. Or about to be. And instead, he moves towards the village alliance. Might be able to find some value there. That's not protected. There's so many villies here as well. Move straight in. Meanwhile, on the other side. Oh, no. Viper! Fortesc, he never went back. He didn't try to compete on that front. Instead, he cuts off the gold supply of Viper. Like a kid who's being told he's not going to get his allowance this month. Right now, Viper is fuming. And oh, no, he blocks it in! The silver tree is going to be destroyed. What a way to play this. He actually wraps around it. There is no way for it to escape. I know I said body blocking isn't a thing to the full extent, but you have to have a route out, and he does not have that. And with it on fire, it looks like the silver tree is about to be the ashen tree. It will burn to cinders. And that is a problem. Viper, his economy just got full halted. Yes, he's got 2 CCs, but his eco count isn't looking good here. Viper, how many caravans, really? I'd say it's probably close to 10 still in caravans. So you're 14 behind your opponent right now, and he's going to keep scaling. So that TC advantage is now even as your opponent continues to build traders and has 1 TC himself. So you no longer have an advantage. And remember, these traders, they don't take that long to produce. It's 17 seconds. They're actually quicker than producing villages. This is a problem. So Silver Tree is going to burn down again. This time he's going to need a full repair. Step readout movement in this. Oh no! The scout! He can't even deploy the step readout here. He can't find value with his villagers. Viper, I think you're done here. You've been outplayed by Fortesc on multiple fronts now. Fortesc, he's transitioning. He pulls out the archers. And you can no longer afford the Magadai. Remember, The Magadite, they cost gold. And you're not gathering gold anymore. Your step readout is blocked. Your Silver Tree has been burnt to cinders. You have no way of accessing gold at all, and I think this game is all but done. Viper, it looks like he hasn't even noticed this right now. Otherwise, he would have attacked the scout with the villagers at least. Wow. I mean, I got to give it to Fortesc. He slam dunked this. And now look, because the scout's here as well, the Lancers are going to move out, and Viper might finally realize what's happened up here, but too little too late. Fortesc, so well played here. Love the way he played into the Silver Tree and got that tech up a bit quicker. His patience shown, not building into aggressive units until his opponent pushes him. And then he bounces back hard, right? He understands that the Vet Horsemen are all you need. It's a raiding situation. Either you go in and find your opponent doesn't have a Silver Tree and you have the edge, or you both go on Silver Tree and you have a way of actually sniping out these caravan units. And that gives him the edge to close this one out and slay the snake.